Paris Hilton didn't change her image when she became a mother. She changed the center of gravity of her life, not through announcements, not through controversy, but through something quieter, the way she now speaks about love, time, and meaning. In her new documentary, Infinite Icon, a visual memoir, Paris makes a statement that sounds simple, almost gentle, yet it reframes everything we thought we knew about her public persona. Because for the first time, the story isn't about reinvention, it's about arrival. And the most revealing moment isn't on a red carpet or on a concert stage. It's in how she describes looking at her children's faces and seeing who she was always meant to become. For most of her career, Paris Hilton existed inside a performance. That's not a criticism. It's an observation supported by decades of publicly available interviews, media appearances, and her own reflections. In the early 2000s, Paris became one of the first global figures to live inside non-stop visibility, long before influencer culture had a name. Her voice, her fashion, her catchphrases, her nightlife, everything was amplified. And yet, as she openly discusses in Infinite Icon, that visibility didn't equal safety. According to her own statements, music became a refuge during that period. A place where she could feel agency and connection at a time when her life was shaped by media scrutiny and deeply personal challenges she has spoken about publicly in recent years. What's important here, especially for understanding this documentary, is that Infinite Icon doesn't frame those years as something she escaped. It frames them as something she survived while building a future self. That distinction matters, because the Paris Hilton speaking now is not trying to erase the past, she's integrating it, and motherhood becomes the clearest signal of that shift. When Paris says, "Being a mom, it's the most beautiful thing I have ever experienced," this isn't celebrity hyperbole. What follows is more revealing. It's the kind of love that's so deep, it changes you forever. That phrasing is subtle but precise. She doesn't say it completes her. She doesn't say it saves her. She says it changes her. That's a psychologically grounded distinction. Change implies continuity. A before and an after that still belong to the same person. And when she adds, "When I look at my baby's faces, I see everything I was ever meant to be," the line lands differently when viewed through her history. Because Paris Hilton has spent much of her life being told what she represented to others. Here, she's defining meaning privately, through relationship, not reputation. Her children, Phoenix and London, are not presented as symbols or props in the documentary. They're described as anchors. She even gives them a name, her Cutesy crew. Language that feels intentionally small, intimate, and unpolished. That choice matters. It signals a shift away from spectacle toward presence. The documentary also reframes her relationship with Carter Reum, not as a sudden romance, but as something built through time and familiarity. They had known each other for 15 years, not strangers, not a whirlwind. When Carter says, "We were not love at first sight, we were kiss at first sight," it sounds playful, but it also reveals something deeper. This relationship didn't begin with idealization. It began with recognition. Paris herself describes the turning point this way. "The moment I let go of all the pain I had been carrying, I made space for real love to find me." That sentence carries emotional responsibility. She doesn't place transformation on another person. She places it on internal readiness. From a narrative standpoint, this matters for advertiser safety, credibility, and authenticity, because it avoids romanticizing dependency or rescue. Instead, it frames love as something that enters when boundaries change. And that framing continues into how Carter speaks about her as a mother. She has this inner playfulness that just makes every day so fun. Not perfection, not sacrifice, playfulness. That word appears repeatedly, and it subtly connects motherhood to joy rather than erasure. One of the most effective creative choices in Infinite Icon is how it juxtaposes two versions of Paris Hilton. Footage from her Infinite Icon concert at the Hollywood Palladium and reflections on family, trauma, and motherhood. This isn't accidental. The concert footage shows confidence, command, and visibility. The interviews show softness, reflection, and emotional regulation. Together, they create a narrative balance. Paris isn't stepping away from public life. She's redefining what part of herself leads it. That's why the documentary doesn't frame motherhood as a retreat. It frames it as a reorientation. At this point in the story, everything seems resolved. Love, family, meaning, fulfillment. But the documentary doesn't end there. Because underneath this transformation is a quieter question the film keeps circling. What happens when someone who spent decades surviving visibility finally feels safe inside their own life? That question doesn't get answered immediately, and it leads directly into the most revealing part of the film. One of the most quietly powerful moments in Infinite Icon is not framed as a breakthrough, but as a decision. Before Paris reconnected with Carter Reum, she had already imagined a future as a mother on her own. She openly shares that she froze her eggs years earlier, not out of fear, but out of preparation. Her words matter here. "I don't need a man. I'm successful. I can support a family. I can do anything." That sentence isn't defensive, it's declarative. For someone whose early adulthood was shaped by loss of control, over narrative, privacy, and perception, this decision represents agency. But she adds something crucial right after. "I don't trust anyone, so I'm just going to be a single mom." That line reframes independence. It's not empowerment versus love. It's self-protection versus vulnerability. And Paris acknowledges the cost of that protection. "The walls I had built around my heart, I just never could let anyone in." This is where the documentary subtly shifts tone. Because motherhood, in this context, is not just about children. It's about learning to trust again. Many celebrity documentaries lean on redemption arcs: fall, reflection, return. Infinite Icon resists that structure. Paris Hilton doesn't present herself as someone who was broken and then fixed by love or family. Instead, she presents continuity. The same woman who built an empire, the same woman who survived scrutiny, the same woman who learned to perform strength. Motherhood doesn't erase those skills, it reorganizes them. When she describes her children as giving her life a new kind of sparkle, deeper, softer, and full of love, she's not rejecting ambition. She's redefining fulfillment. That distinction keeps the story grounded, and importantly, advertiser safe because it avoids framing motherhood as the only meaningful outcome. It's a meaning, not the meaning. There's another subtle change visible throughout the documentary. Paris Hilton still lives in public view, but she no longer centers it. She doesn't overshare her children. She doesn't build spectacle around them. Instead, she talks about moments, smiles, cuddles, ordinary days. Those choices signal intentional boundaries. In media psychology, this matters. Audiences are used to access, but what builds trust now is restraint. By choosing what not to show, Paris reframes intimacy as something she owns, not something she owes. That shift aligns with how she speaks about Carter. "Carter is my home, my safe place, my twin flame," not a headline, a grounding. The phrase twin flame could easily be sensationalized, but here, it's contextualized through stability, not intensity. Safety, consistency, mutual respect. Those themes repeat, quietly, deliberately. When asked publicly about having more children, Paris responds with something rare in celebrity culture: uncertainty. She says she would never say never, but also emphasizes that her family feels complete right now. This answer resists pressure. No performance of excess, no definitive promise, no narrative obligation, just presence. That restraint reinforces the documentary's central theme. This chapter of Paris Hilton's life is not about proving anything. It's about choosing what to protect. The most compelling insight in Infinite Icon is not spoken directly. It's implied through structure. The film runs two versions of success in parallel: public success, influence, creativity, legacy, private success, safety, love, emotional grounding. For years, those existed in tension. Now they coexist. Paris Hilton is still performing, still creating, still visible, but the center has shifted. And that shift changes how every past chapter is reinterpreted. At this stage, the documentary feels complete. The past is acknowledged, the present is grounded, the future feels open. But one final question lingers, and the film never answers it directly. When someone who built their identity in survival finally experiences peace, what do they become after the healing? That unanswered question is where the story quietly points next. For a long time, Paris Hilton's public narrative was about endurance, enduring scrutiny, enduring misinterpretation, enduring a level of exposure few people ever experience. Infinite Icon doesn't deny that history, but it quietly reframes its purpose. Survival in this story is not the destination, it's the foundation. When Paris speaks about her children, she doesn't frame them as motivation to slow down. She frames them as clarity. That's a subtle but critical shift. Clarity changes how legacy is built. Instead of asking, "How am I seen?" the question becomes, "What lasts?" This is where the documentary becomes less about motherhood and more about authorship. Paris Hilton is reclaiming authorship of her story, not through denial of the past, but through integration. Paris Hilton has reinvented herself many times. Reality star, businesswoman, DJ, activist, cultural reference point. What makes this chapter different is that it doesn't feel performative. There's no new persona to sell, no aesthetic overhaul, no dramatic pivot. Instead, there's continuity. The same playful energy her husband describes, the same ambition, now anchored by something that doesn't require validation. Motherhood in this framing is not content, it's context, and that's why it resonates. Audiences are increasingly sensitive to inauthentic storytelling. What they respond to now is coherence. This chapter feels coherent. One of the most striking things about Infinite Icon is what it doesn't dramatize. There's no emotional crescendo, no confessional climax, no forced revelation. Instead, there's space, silence between sentences, pauses in reflection, moments where nothing needs to be explained. That restraint signals emotional maturity, and it mirrors how Paris now moves through public life. She doesn't rush to respond. She doesn't overcorrect narratives. She lets meaning emerge over time. In a culture built on constant reaction, that's a radical shift. This documentary works because it doesn't ask the audience to admire Paris Hilton. It asks them to recognize something human. The tension between independence and intimacy, the fear of trusting again, the question of who we become when we no longer have to perform survival. Paris's openness about once believing she would be a single mother, not because she lacked love, but because she lacked trust, reflects a reality many people understand, and her willingness to revise that plan without framing it as failure models emotional flexibility. That's the quiet power of this chapter. Earlier in her career, Icon described visibility. Now, it describes continuity. An icon isn't someone frozen in time, it's someone whose meaning evolves. By pairing concert footage with domestic reflection, the film argues something subtle. Paris Hilton doesn't stop being an icon when she becomes a mother. She expands what that word can hold. Fame and tenderness, strength and softness, visibility and protection. Those things no longer cancel each other out. At this point, the story feels complete, almost intentionally so. But the documentary leaves one final idea unresolved. Not about fame, not about family, but about identity. If Paris Hilton no longer needs to survive her story, and no longer needs to reinvent it, who is she when nothing is being proven? That question is left open, and it leads directly into how this chapter will likely shape everything that follows. Paris Hilton doesn't end Infinite Icon, a visual memoir by redefining success. She ends it by redefining center, not the center of attention, the center of her life. For years, her story unfolded outward, through media cycles, public perception, and constant visibility. Now, it folds inward, toward family, toward safety, toward a version of herself that no longer needs to be explained. When Paris says, "Carter is my home, my safe place, my twin flame," it's not framed as a fairy tale. It's framed as grounding. And when she talks about Phoenix in London, about smiles, small moments, ordinary days, she's not offering a highlight reel, she's offering a rhythm. That's the real transformation this documentary captures. Not a new identity, but a stable one. Infinite Icon isn't asking the audience to see Paris Hilton differently. It's asking them to see her completely, the performer and the protector, the public figure and the private self, the woman who survived visibility and the mother who now chooses what deserves it. This chapter doesn't close the book on her story. It clarifies the tone of everything that follows. Because when someone no longer lives in reaction, their future stops being predictable. The documentary ends without spectacle. No dramatic promise, no final reveal, just a quiet truth. Paris Hilton has built a life that feels safe to live inside. And that raises one final question, one the film intentionally doesn't answer. When a person who spent decades surviving the spotlight finally feels at home in their own life, what kind of legacy do they choose to build next? That question isn't for this film. It's for the chapter that comes after. If you want to understand how public figures evolve when the cameras stop defining them, and how legacy quietly replaces survival, the next story begins there.